was diagnosed at 1, so in those early diagnosed days. And I just remember, and at that point we weren't sure if she was going to be able to walk at all. And I remember just feeling this sadness that she wouldn't be able to dance because I had some music on. And I thought, because, that just brought some sadness to me. And then you sort of think about relationships and how will that look like for her. But again, through the support of Nick, I guess, that, I could sort of say, I'm having this moment and I just need to download it. And then I could just leave it over there and go.
Hello, Quanta folks, and welcome to another episode of Fark the Shoulds podcast and vlogcast. I am Jodi from QuantiMama, and I am super excited to be having a chat with this luscious woman. I am so pleased to introduce is Katy, a dear friend and soul sister, and right now rocking the coolest hair because she's just come from salon. Hello, Katy.
Hi, Jod.
It does see. Katy, I don't even know how to start by describing you. Like you're magic, firstly, but you come from essentially a traditional working background from the point of view of you're in the healthcare system like I was, and then have gone through this metamorphosis. But why don't you tell our beautiful Quanta folks what it is you do and how you transform people's lives on a day-to-day basis at the moment?
Okay. So going from emergency medicine, I started opening my eyes up to other and have learnt about neural integration system, or NIS, or Neuralink. And that's a system that involves rebalancing the body via asking the brain to pay attention to imbalances in the body. So we use a muscle test to work out where there might be disconnection and tap on an area of the cranium. And basically we're saying, hey, brain, pay attention here. There's a disconnection and you need to sort it out. So it's working on the premise that we all have a self-healing ability and we ask the body to readjust as it needs to. So that's Neuralink. And then we've got homeopathy, so the energy medicine that is incredibly powerful, that asks the body to elevate its vital force where it's been dampened, essentially. So they're the two modalities that I'm now playing around with.
Yeah, which is a far cry from working in Emerge in big regional hospitals and so forth. So what's interesting about that is that both of those are either enmeshed in energy medicine, or they're enmeshed in the idea, as you say, that the cues are coming from the body is the thing that is the self-healing, and we provide that, I guess, that signifier for it to pay attention to it.
That's right.
So I think what's interesting with you, and I might be taking the leap on this one in terms of how you got here, but the reason why I wanted to talk to you today is I'm really interested in talking about labels, and particularly labelling of children. And it's my sneaking suspicion that, firstly, I don't have authority to talk about labels and sort of question them, and much less obviously critique them, because I have children that all look normal, for want of a better term. So I'm not allowed to actually question those things. You only get to question it if you have some qualification in that space. But it's my sneaking suspicion that you've ended up with those kind of modalities, and obviously very much changing people's lives through that way. Maybe because you've had an experience with your child that meant that you did things differently. Would that be fair to say?
That's true. So Neuralink, I found Neuralink because I was looking for something other than what Western medicine could offer me.
Yep.
So I have a child with a rare genetic syndrome, and I was looking for ways that we could support her to find her own set of instructions and to balance her body in ways that I hadn't understood prior, and knew the universe offered me Neuralink, and that was my starting point really for exploring other ways to approach health and wellness. And labels can be so restrictive, can't they? Like that, we could use any labels. I know we're talking about children, but we could look at all sorts of labels and see how restrictive they make our thinking and we're meant to subscribe to whatever that label offers us, and I don't do that, because my daughter is whole in all that she is, and I'm just looking for ways to support her in her journey, really. And we do that hopefully with all our children, no matter the need.
It's just more obvious, I think, with your daughter in that way, because she stands apart from other children. So for someone bearing witness to that, you notice that. But one of the things that just hit me so strongly, and I think is why I've been really interested in the power of labels, is, and I know that we've kind of discussed this a little bit off air, but two things. Firstly, when I first met you and also met your daughter, not once did you mention anything about this, rare genetic condition that she has been gifted for this life, which means her superpowers show up in a slightly different way. She stands out as extraordinary from the start. So that's number one. So I was really interested about that, because as far as I'm concerned, we have a society that just is so addicted to the drama cycle. And if you've got a way to kind of stick your pitchfork in some story that means that you are, either surviving or a victim, or, can just explain the hardships in your life, then people go for that like it's a free donut.
Well, one, you're stepping into that fear cycle, really, aren't you?
Agreed.
So someone, a physician gives you a label that you could easily go, doom and gloom. And I can think of a couple of moments, very transient moments, where I had sort of a sense of grief, I guess. But I was really just comparing her to what a normal life should look like.
Yes.
And they were so transient for me, and I've really never fixated or attached, perhaps is a better word, to her medical label, because I don't know how that supports her. Because as soon as you say to someone she's got Kabuki syndrome, then there's there's a change in the way they interact with the person. They might come from a place of pity or fear, or not see her as a whole person. And so therefore I don't have consent to do that for her, I don't believe. And number two, what a completely unfair thing to change a potential interaction she has by already saying, hey, by the way, she's got this. And
cut her this dispensation because she's different.
That's right.
So, I mean, the reason why I'm so interested, and I want to say to people listening, I promised I would do this earlier, actually, right at the start of the podcast, because I have dabbled in that questioning the labels with QuantiMama Kerry a little bit, and it has been interesting in the way that it has brought responses from people. I'm not going to say triggered, because that makes it sound like I'm diminishing their responses, but these people's responses were very reasonably excitable, shall we say, because I was questioning the validity or the veracity of choosing to label children. And in my very humble estimation, I think it limits these kids. It's a short-term solution that provides maybe safety, guidance, a pathway forward for, the parents and main care providers. What's that?
It provides, sorry, I did interrupt there, Jodi, but that pathway provides them within the box. Within the safety, that's not the right word there, but within the confines of your own limited expectations of that person.
Correct. So that's what's really interesting, and you and I see that. And so what makes our perspective unique or different? What's interesting about that? And I do wonder if it ties back to our emergency medicine experience. Like obviously mine was in ambulance, yours was in emerge. And what I mean, I know that we've sort of talked about this, but I think it's great for people to hear this perspective because they might not have appreciated the long-term effects of making these choices. And I get why they do. Like I get it. If you have a child that has needs that are beyond what the normal are, then it changes how you parent. You could argue that's the case for all kids, but it's quite obvious, right, that you need to parent differently or, resource yourself differently. But what I want to say is that what I've seen with labels, and I'm curious as to whether this has been your experience too, is that when I was in ambulance, if someone had essentially a label, particularly like psych stuff. Oh my God. Like if you had a psych background and you told me that, then you basically got containerized into that prism so that everything you said was taken from this vantage of, well, this is a psych. So I can't necessarily qualify or I don't give it the same weight or importance as I would for someone who didn't have that medical history. And I'm just curious, like, was that your experience as well?
Absolutely. So, absolutely. I mean, I can think of clients now that have that story, but also many regular clients of the Emerge who would come in with a history, and that story is all the people can see. It clouds their ability to triage or to nurse or to care for the person in the way they present in a whole presentation, because the first thing they're reading through, it's like putting on those glasses, that perspective, and that's you're looking through that lens of history of they've got a psych history. That's a good example, really. And it's another limitation to providing holistic care. Let's put it like that.
Everything.
And I guess
like
you're an Emerge, so how holistic is it? So that's another question. However, we won't go there.
We can go anywhere you like, darling. Wherever you want to go. I'll go with you.
No, definitely what I've seen, definitely what I see now. I typically see clients that are very unheard because they've got a history that doesn't fit within the label. It doesn't fit within the protocol. And so well-meaning practitioners, medical practitioners can't help them, because they're outside the box. They're outside the parameters. Yeah. And so these people are left feeling really unvalidated. And the same would apply, I think, if you put a lot of weight on labels with children, that story is going to follow them forever. And is that fair to subscribe them to that without consent? Now, I'm not saying that labels don't have their benefits in that. I acknowledge that my daughter receives an NDIS package, so she gets funded, but the only way she could get funding is via a label. So there's that, but you're
not defined by that diagnosis, and I think
it's not her identity.
That's right. What I see in society, sort of in a very sweeping way, is that people hang on to those labels and they use those as an access all areas kind of pass for various things, not realizing that the long-term impact. And I also think, like, not even just thinking about, say, what medicos down the track will make of that diagnosis and how they'll treat that individual differently, but I also think what happens for that child, say, that keeps hearing the fact that they've got this diagnosis,
and they live to it. Well, they live limited.
Of course,
by it.
And so then I'm curious about the whole ADHD thing and things like that. And I mean, that's a whole other conversation as the causality of that, right? That'll definitely trigger some people if we start talking about the reason for that. But what happens with those kids who go, oh, it's just ADHD, and so this kind of disruptive behaviour almost
Mm.
gets like sanctioned because they've got this diagnosis, right?
Mm.
And it could be any other things. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff we talk about on Alchemizing Education about the fact that the, fishbowl needs cleaning for the kids. The fish are not the problem, the environment
Yeah, that's
is.
right.
And
That's
so
right.
there's that element as well. But I do wonder if there's too much permissiveness when we do label. It's like, oh, I can take it easy now because
Hands
I've got
off
a
parenting.
label.
Yeah. So you've got a limitation put on the child
Yep.
without consent. And then you've got a limitation that's put on the parent, which they may have chosen to do that.
Yep.
However, they are providing a really nice way to excuse behaviour or to excuse boundary setting. That, they've got ADHD or they've got whatever.
Yeah.
That's the reason why, But that's not really raising, in my books, it's not really raising, kids that are whole, is it?
Yes.
It's not. It's giving them. It's giving before they're even consciously, engaging maybe in their world. They're already handed a platter of
Yep.
I can't do, of lack, of oh well, that's okay. I'm allowed to act like that because I've got a label.
Yeah. I can't help it.
Um, I can't help it. It's a really good opt out, and equally for the parents because they can just go, oh, it's them.
That's right. And
And
so the reason why this is so triggering and the reason why we've had people push back quite naturally against that is that when you suggest, the validity of or the appropriateness of labels, people go, well, it means that I get access to resources and I need that help and it gave me permission to actually accept help. And I get all of that because what I see in you is you rocking the shit out of the way to use that label, shall we say, in a very high vibe way. Like it gives you access to very legitimate funding, which is quite appropriate so your daughter gets supported and gets like even, stuff that makes it easier for her just to have a normal, obviously parentheses, but normal
or
experience
just
as a
to be able
kid.
to, for her to, what I was thinking about before we
Yeah.
got on, Jodes, is that it's like her stepping stones need to be closer together.
Yeah.
She just needs to have a little bit more practice at tasks that you and I as children would pick up quicker. She just needs to bring those gaps a little closer, have a little bit more practice, and then she'll get there in the end. It's the same with, your homeschooling
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit all models at,
No.
mainstream education, but we can adapt that to meet the needs of the child.
Yes.
And so I guess through funded support, I'm just simply meeting the needs of her.
That's
She
right.
wants to ride a bike without training wheels. Well, hey, let's do a bit of a physio workout for you and build up some muscle and we'll get there. And so we can utilize the skills of other people to help us do that.
Yeah.
Via funding.
Yeah.
That's helpful. But ultimately, we're just meeting her needs and supporting her to be the best version of herself.
So
we don't need to subscribe to a label. It doesn't.
That's right.
I can't.
And that's where I see that you've used it in a very high vibe way because you've used the functional part of it, but then it hasn't been something you've gone out and gone, I've got a special needs child and yada yada yada. So, and it's not even like you've even had a tenseness or a defensiveness of going, I want my child to have all the normal experiences. Like literally you just approach this kid with what needs has she got and what can we meet and what do we need to go and get resources for and what are the requirements to actually satisfy those resources. And I love that. I want people to parent from that place for all their kids. I mean, that's
right.
That's why I have a swearing wharfie for a 9-year-old, Other kids wouldn't get away with the swearing that my kid gets away with, but I parent him differently to the other kids because
That's right.
It's got a different meaning. He has a different learning. And, if I parent him the same way, then I will cause some kind of trauma. I already know that. I can see it clearly, right? So I want people to look at their kids as individuals, but as wholes as well. And I see that in terms of what you're doing with her. I'm really curious about because we both came from very like mainstream medical thinking, and it took me a
Yeah.
while to break out of it. I was so grateful for the last 4 years because it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I went,
Yeah.
this is not making sense. Like,
Yeah,
if that
that's
doesn't
right.
make sense, what else doesn't make sense, right? So then it created
Mm,
this crescendo of change in our life that's kind
mm.
of been, we've got a bit of, energetic whiplash off it, but,
Yeah.
it's okay. Like, it's okay, but, it's a
Mm,
safe free fall. What happened for you in terms of, did you go through, you said there were some very sort of um, transformational moments that you remember, but I imagine there must have been, say, I don't know, I'm just guessing for what it might have been like for you, but obviously
mm.
grief about not having a normal child, and then, questions about, how did I have an impact on this, or what was my, like, all those natural questions I imagine must go through your mind. And and I don't take that away from anyone, that's the human
No.
experience, but what was it that shook you out of that? Like, what was your Rona awakening with your daughter and how you
Yeah.
view her?
Yeah. I don't recall being um, overwhelmed by those stories, I guess, to start with. So um, there was, or as soon as we had her, there was some medical difference, issues, hip dysplasia and, um, you know, normal,
Yeah,
um, you know, common
common. Yeah.
medical things that
Mm.
we had to sort out. Um, and I, I think I just met it with this is just this is just her this is just her deal. This is what
Yep.
she's called in. I don't think I had that language then, but I
Mm.
certainly um, I do recall talking to my husband because he'd had, in my view, a lot of traumas, and I said, "How do you feel about like another sort of thing?" And he's like, "Oh, that's just the cards she's been dealt with."
Yeah.
So I guess we could also bounce off each other in that regard. I'm not, my husband's not a doom and gloom, anxiety ridden kind of fella. He's just like, let's move on and get on with it. And what are we going to do about it? So that enabled me to harness that kind of energy. Um, yeah, I, I don't know how to answer you, to be honest, but um,
What
I would,
jarred you out of the Western thinking? Because you were still working in Western medicine. And I mean
mm,
that's a lot of feedback. I mean, I found that being an ambulance, and once I got out or got a little bit of distance, I was actually then able to get perspective. But I struggled with that inside the system. So I'm just curious about that.
I think I already had some sort of innate awareness that,
Mm,
um, I mean, aside from, like a hip dysplasia that needed treatment, there was nothing wrong. There was nothing medically wrong, I should say, with her
mm,
that required immediate treatment. And so I didn't have to engage in that service. And, I quickly recognised that these 6 monthly paediatrician appointments we should attend were a should.
yep.
And I couldn't see the value in it. And they were giving me answers like, I will refer you to this other medical specialty. And I thought, well, if you do that, you're just going to say surgery. And what is the outcome and what is the purpose of this?
Yeah.
So um, I I sought the medical
Can I
intervention.
pause you
That
for
was,
a second? Because
yeah.
I want the listeners just to really absorb that incredible insight, which I think is completely missing from society. You you took a moment to think about what was going to happen or what that information was going to do or facilitate before it happened. And I see this as missing completely in society
Mm,
where people
mm,
just go off and they go, I can get a test. Like my mum, bless her cotton socks, is like, I can go and get that test. And I'm like, what are you going to do with the information? What's going to
that's
happen
right.
when they
Yeah,
have that result? Will that change how they treat
that's
you?
right.
Will things change? Like, where is the presence for this sort of investigation? Is it needed or is it a should? And so it's
Yeah,
fascinating
that's
that
right.
you were a should fucker from the start. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
I think
I,
it's
I just didn't
impressive.
have the language there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the language there to support that. And so when you ask these questions, I need to sort of really reflect back on those times. But um, I was going to add in something, Jody. Now I've lost my train of thought. Um,
It's lucky it's
yeah, I
so
mean,
eloquent,
I
that
can
language.
remember. Yeah,
Worth waiting
I
for.
can. Thank you. I can recall a moment where this sort of acute grief came over me, and it would have been early days. She was diagnosed at 1, so in those early diagnosed days, and I just remember, and at that point we weren't sure if she was going to be able to walk at
Mm.
all, and I remember just feeling this sadness that she wouldn't be able to dance because I had some music on, and I thought, oh, because yeah, that just brought some sadness to me. And then then you sort of think about relationships and how will that look like for her. But again, through the support of Nick, I guess that I could sort of say I'm having this moment and I just need to download it, and then I could just leave it over there and go, I'm I've done that, and now we just need to focus on what she needs and how to support her. So for me, it feels very simple and obvious. So you're asking these questions, and I'm like, well, that's just how you do it. That's just how
Yeah.
you roll. I I haven't stopped um to deeply think on about why we've gone this way because it feels right, and
Mm.
she indicate that that's right. Like she's responding well. She's yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense. And I want to tell our beautiful quanta folk that this kid is an awesome dancer. Like,
Yeah.
any concern that was there, she just rocks the dance floor, which is
That's
awesome.
right. Even in the hairdresser chair this morning, she was bopping around. So,
She loves music. Oh my God, I love that
she
kid.
does. Yeah.
It's great, isn't it? So then so I'm curious, just as we finish up, how then
Mm,
do you see her future, and how then do you parent from that space? Because from
mm,
my observation, I see that you just go, what do you want to do? Like, the world of
mm.
infinite possibilities is still there for you. You don't apply those limitations. But how does it feel in your shoes?
Yeah. I won't lie in that there are moments where I think, gosh, how can we keep her safe in this scary community at times?
Yeah.
What does independent living look like for her?
Yes.
Um, and yeah, Nick and I do spend sometimes some time sitting in that space, but we don't have the answer now, and we don't know where. And she's kicking goals all the time. She's demonstrating how not to live inside that box.
Yeah.
She's showing me that whatever limitations we may have put on her don't apply.
Mm.
So when I do step into those moments of fear, really, I remember that she will guide us. Um, she will show us what she needs, and I feel really confident that we will just follow her need and support her in the best way we can.
Mm.
I don't know if that answers your question. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, I think that there must be some comfort in there for parents that have also got children with labels, because it's another way that life can be done. And
Mm,
it brings the focus back into the family unit, because obviously
mm,
so much of our society is external. We go to the white coats for advice on what to do for XYZ. We go to the institutions to learn how to, or what to learn, and there's so little that comes back to that sort of family introspection. And I think you guys
mm,
you walk the talk on that, and it's
mm,
beautiful to see. So
mm.
what are your thoughts? I mean, what would you say to someone who is walking down that pathway of labeling for whatever reason? No
Mm,
judgment. I'm just
mm.
it's what the masses do anyway. So you're basically following the herd in terms of that momentum of energy. But what would you say to those parents?
Oh, I would suggest that they pause and and stop and think about the purpose of the label and be really honest with themselves and their partners and their family and their child, um, about how that label would serve them. And if they all muscle test it, some of us muscle test it, but
I love muscle testing.
yeah, that's right. But that might not be a language that everyone understands. So, just stop for a moment and tap into what you think feels right. And think about, what that label has to offer you, before you go ahead and walk that pathway. And you may choose to go down that pathway, and that's okay. But it doesn't have to be the identity that you enmesh yourself with.
Yes.
And so then further on from that, think about the language you might apply to that label if that's what you choose to use, and how you frame that within your family context and the child's living and future and all of that.
Because it does seem like they're young forever, and then suddenly they get into early teen and mid-teen years, and you go, holy shit, they're going to be out of the house shortly. So that is a moment in time that it feels like time expands and is sort of static when they're, in that primary school age things, which is often when the labels are being shelled out. Probably because of how kids sit in the institution, it becomes like this kind of yardstick to measure kids by, of, they're sitting outside the norm, so therefore it's easy to label them. I think it's beautiful advice.
And sorry,
go on.
I'll just add in there, Jodes, that if you're pondering the label, ponder, are you meeting the child's need?
Yeah.
What is it that you can do as a parent my computer's being funny. What is it that you can do as a parent? Or how can you change your parenting style to that might be more supportive for that child, that might meet their needs in greater capacity, and therefore, questioning that label. Is it actually required, or is there shifts that you can make within your family that would be more supportive, that would meet the child's need?
Yeah, and really, it just comes down to noticing what everyone else is doing, but then saying, all right, well, what's the should in this, and farking it.
That's right.
It's such a great way to just do that litmus test against those things, so that you can actually work out what's right for you and your family and your child, and what's actually just the done thing, which doesn't necessarily have a long-term view. So beautiful, Katy. I knew you'd have the juice and the wisdom.
Oh, thank you, Jodes.
Oh, I'm so glad to catch you on a fresh hair day as well. So
I know, that was a bonus, wasn't it?
Thank you for bringing your heart and soul to this conversation and sharing. I mean, that's very personal stuff, but I really appreciate that. I really appreciate it. I think there's lots of parents out there that probably are walking that tightrope of how to sit in the space of society and the institutions and so forth, which is so overwhelmingly predominant. And then like the little voice inside, we would call that intuition or source connection or whatever, but the energy of that, and they feel it in their quiet moments. They feel it.
But getting quiet is the key, isn't it?
Absolutely. Kind of scary, but always good.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, beautiful Quantifolk, for joining us. Katy, thank you for showing up in your complete lusciousness, which I just adore. Join us, Quantifolks, for more conversations. We're so grateful for your company, and we'll talk to you very soon. Beautiful Quantifolks. At QuantiMama, we have a mandate that we feel so passionate about. We want, and we are, raising the community's vibration and frequency and consciousness through parenting and birth experiences. Such incredible, transformational experiences that will shape you as a person and are the very fabric of life. Do you want to find out how to high vibe your experience even more? Then QuantiMama is your place. Head there for the High Vibe Birth course, ultimate preparation for birthing. Head there if you want to re-engage your child in the love of learning for the Take the Leap course, which is a deschooling course for parents. There's beautiful mind movies, and obviously this podcast is there, and we are here to support you. So head there for all the juice. Beautiful Quanta folks. You know, at QuantiMama, we have a mandate that we feel so passionate about. We want and we are raising the community's vibration and frequency and consciousness through parenting and birth experiences. Such incredible, transformational experiences that will shape you as a person and are the very fabric of life. Do you want to find out how to high vibe your experience even more? Then QuantiMama is your place. Head there for the High Vibe Birth course, ultimate preparation for birthing. Head there if you want to re-engage your child in the love of learning for the Take the Leap course, which is a deschooling course for parents. There's beautiful mind movies, and obviously this podcast is there, and we are here to support you. So head there for all the juice.